Joining us from Chicago is Kate Williams. Kate is the Vice President of Sacred Music at GIA Publications, where she hosts the Interchange podcast. Welcome to Jesuitical, Kate.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's so wonderful to be with you.
It's great to have you. We're pumped to talk about this subject. I think anyone who's ever gone to Mass with me knows that I am that guy in the pew singing way too loud.
Yes.
I probably draw attention to myself, which is not the goal, I understand, but I do have some. I will lean over to my wife frequently and just go yes whenever a certain song's announced.
Oh, really?
I would say, oh yeah, I'm sort of going up or down depending on what they pick. But
I love this energy.
Yeah, and one of my favorite hymnals of all time is Gather.
Amen. Okay,
amen.
Our work here is done. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Thank you.
Amen. So we're excited to talk about your work at GIA, but I'm curious, we were prepping for this interview, and I had no idea that GIA stands for Gregorian Institute of America, which...
It sure does.
I think it's kind of funny, no?
Funny? I mean, I think it's amazing.
Well, in the liturgy wars over music, it's often, we pit Gregorian chant against the folk music that
against
comes in
Gather.
Gather.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And we build our own little narratives around that too. And it's funny to see how people have kind of described their discovery that GIA stands for Gregorian Institute of America. From both of those kind of polar opposites, people will say that we have abandoned our Gregorian roots in favor of the contemporary worship style, like we're on that side of the war or whatever. But in reality, it's more of a, we have evolved to more properly appreciate that we contain multitudes, as does the church. And we in no way abandoned Gregorian and just become GIA, but we still stand for all of it.
So what did GIA, or Gregorian Institute of America, what did it do before the Second Vatican Council when Gregorian music was king at churches? Yeah,
it was like a school, truly an institute. It was a collection of instructors that would find ways to help the church understand and more properly sing their faith in the style of Gregorian chant, to understand how to read it and how to sing it either as a cantor or as a collective community responding, just like we would expect to collectively sing in congregational song today.
Can you just give us a breakdown of what liturgical music would have looked like before Vatican II, so in the 1940s and 50s, and then maybe in the periods leading up to it? What was the big difference from what your average person in the pew would have seen and experienced?
I think markedly people would recognize that language was the big difference. So there's much, much more Latin and really an emphasis on, if you follow the evolution of church music from the beginnings, there's, of course, chant. It evolves into really highly technical polyphony, still using Latin as the basis of the sung prayer. But as you kind of approach the Second Vatican Council, you see more and more iterations of people experimenting both with language and with kind of a contemporary relevance of style as a way to both express faith and a way to draw people towards it and leaning in to find a little bit more. It's hard to do when you don't understand the language. So more and more that became a need to do it in our vernacular.
And I think some people imagine that every pre-Vatican II Mass was like a Mozart concert.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that wasn't the case. You probably still had your off-key cantor here and there showing up at Mass.
I can imagine that that's probably the case. Now, I know a lot of people will only be listening to this podcast and not viewing it, but just FYI, I'm a millennial, so I wasn't there myself. But it also has to do with, I think, a decision that we've been making over time about what we're willing to invest in the music in a community. Of course, if you have the resources to invest financially in not only a music director and a liturgist, but to invest in a professional choir or invest in a professional cantor Those resources, of course, becoming more limited across the board in churches. Music is certainly no exception. And so we have many more volunteers.
Who are tricky to fire.
They are tricky to fire, aren't they?
Yeah.
But they come with all the joy and passion that you would want to see on the hearts of the faithful. And so sometimes we've made some exceptions to work with what we have and not what we might desire.
I want to get more to like the practicalities of running a music ministry today. But before we do that, can you talk a bit about what the fathers at the Second Vatican Council actually said about what the role of music should be in the liturgy?
Well, everybody will be quick to point back to the full, conscious, and active participation of the faithful. And so that means that what I think was traditionally leaning towards the performative in worship, they wanted to swing back the attention towards this, especially in the context of worship. This is not just a song, but it is in fact sung prayer. It is elevated prayer, elevated because we are doing so with the volume of our voices. We're doing so with the attention and specificity towards the construction of any particular song, whether that be congregational or choral. And so being fully consciously and actively participatory means that we're going to have to be a part of that. And so the music needs to become much more accessible to the person in the pew and not lean towards the overly produced, highly technical music of, the Mozart concert that you were referencing.
Yeah, but the documents did say that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that there's a special place should be given to Gregorian chant as a part of our patrimony and tradition in the Catholic Church.
Yeah. It just says, I think, its primacy of place is that Gregorian chant should take. And so we would never want to eliminate a part of our history simply because we don't prefer it, or we would, prefer a different genre that's maybe more commonplace in the secular world that we're surrounded with at any point in time. But it's something that, as a part of our tradition, we carry with us and we hold it respectfully, understanding that there is an authenticity with which we can still participate in Gregorian chant. And also a respectful show that this is a living faith that evolves and grows with us.
Now, the Second Vatican Council called for the full, active, and conscious participation of all the faithful. And my enthusiasm notwithstanding, I think if they'd looked around today, they would say that we either got this really wrong or no one listened, because it seems like most people don't sing at Mass. Is that been true in your field work?
Well, this sounds like, possibly they're not singing because you're singing so well. They don't think that they are needed.
I'm intimidating. Could be.
Having gone to Mass Lisac, I don't think that's it.
So
whose fault is it?
Whose fault is it? Yeah, there's that famous book, right, called Why Catholics Can't Sing. There's a lot of reasons for this. I think on just a basic human level, I don't think it's uniquely Catholic. It's true that other church traditions have developed their congregational song in different ways. For instance, my Mennonite friends will go on and on about how, I don't understand why all of your music is just the melody only. We need 4-part harmony because our people are always going to sing in 4-part harmony in the pews, which is amazing, right? And also, I don't know that you can expect that from the norm across any one denomination in the United States. But I think at a human level, singing is simply too vulnerable. And as we, continue to develop as a nation, we become more and more protective. Our safe spaces seem more and more limited. And I do think that we see the effects of that in what we're willing to use our voice for. So many people, maybe you're one of them or know them or they're in your family, will say, well, I don't sing because I'm not good at it.
Well, I also think so. I love singing at church, and I don't think I'm that good at it. But I remember when I was like in high school and going to mass was the biggest chore in the world. Like turning to my mom and being like, "This is so boring." She's like, "It will be less boring if you sing." And I started singing, and it's true. Though I will say, so my dad's a Presbyterian, and he would argue that this is a very Catholic problem. Like he goes to mass with my mom every week, and it's just like, why is no one singing? Because both of his parents are Presbyterian, and we're in the choir until their 80s and 90s, and it just does seem like a different tradition. But so to the vulnerability and safety point, so. Like I said, I love singing at mass, but it's actually a lot harder to sing when no one else is singing. Like I take the cues, I can follow the music when there's more people singing.
It's like a doom loop.
And
right?
so I kind of get like annoyed at people around me because I'm like, if we all did this together, it would be a lot easier for me.
Right. It kind of is that ultimate expression of communal living, not letting any one person do anything alone, but each of us kind of shouldering the burden or the joys together. But I don't know that we do community very well. I think some of the places I've been definitely have. We were talking earlier about St. Nicholas Church in Evanston. That is a community that feels very united in several different missions, and you can see it. You can hear it in their singing that they have experienced togetherness, community. They've experienced, grief and joy in a way that kind of removes some of those inhibitions.
I mean, is it fair to say that like a parish's sense of community and belonging will be reflected in how many people are singing at Mass, or is that too much?
It's not an exact science, but to me, that feels true in the places where I have been, where there is really good community building that presents itself in every way. You can see it in the attitude of the children who are present. Is this a place that has just a religious education program, or is it religious education as well as a Catholic school? Do these children who are present have opportunities to be together, or are they kind of like meeting each other for the first time on Sundays? I think a lot of ministry has to do with not just what you're able to produce on any given Sunday, but I think some ministers and theologians would remind us to pay attention to what's happening between the Sundays. How are you behaving as community when you're out there in the real world, where we're supposed to be living those gospel values that we rehearse in the liturgy together?
Curious if you have any maybe theological insights to what singing does to the individual and to a church group. I think it was John Paul II who said, like, the faith doesn't only need to be stated and believed, but sung. Like, it's actually not really optional. Like, it does something. It does something to the soul and to the community. What do you think that
it does. I love this question. I think every part of my work should be reminded of this inherent need for human beings to sing. Of course, that's reiterated very clearly in our current Pope himself, and Augustinian. St. Augustine, of course, very commonly attributed as the one who said that one who sings prays twice. And that's true for a lot of reasons, but I think even at a physiological level, like what is actually happening in your body when you are singing. And music ministers love to, ruminate on the science that says that when we sing together, we actually sync our bodies together. Like they have done tests and surveys and found that people who are singing together actually do their heartbeats start to beat at the same time. Part of this is because we're all breathing at the same time when we're singing together. When people mumble together the Lord's Prayer, like there's a little bit of collective sound happening, but everybody's also kind of at their own pace. They're cadencing at their own times. They're emphasizing the words that they traditionally would emphasize in their household or in their personal prayer. But when you sing the Our Father together, there's a unitive function that happens simply because you have to follow the same tone for the same duration. for every part of that prayer. So you start breathing together. When a community breathes together, I mean, anybody who, I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but anybody who does yoga knows that there's a lot of instruction simply about breathing in your own body and listening to the breathing that happens in the room. That's all happening in worship too. Most of it is something that we're not calling our attention to. It's just happening naturally. Part of that is because our rituals come from hundreds and thousands of years of tradition that shows that using these bodily functions to unite us has some value when we're trying to be united in thought and in deed as well.
I mean, I'm a dad to a newborn, and even like singing to my daughter and watching the effect that has on her, it's amazing that like humans like love music and can hear it and like hear sound and harmony. Like it's just to me it's like proof that God just wants us to enjoy things, because it doesn't, as far as I can tell, like seems to not really, it seems kind of superfluous. I'm sure there is like an evolutionary reason for it, but it does seem to be this just like human experience to hear sound and harmony and respond to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's singing music ultimately is about communication. And singing is the kind of communication, I would argue, as would many other musicologists, singing is the kind of communications that humans were built to do. And you are a new dad, and you know that when your daughter was born, the first sound that she made is more like a song than it is like a sentence or a word. I'm sure it was a scream or a cry.
I mean, that's kind of a crazy thing to say to a sleep-deprived parent. That her cries are like songs.
No,
like,
the cooing, not the crying.
Oh, okay. I was like,
yeah, it's
like,
something that has an inflection to it. It has a volume to it. It doesn't have any discernible word, and yet often, and you'll come to know the more she grows, you'll have a sense of what she means when she is simply screaming or crying. Especially, there's a lot of also scientific evidence about how moms know that in a particular way because they have been a part of this baby's body and the baby a part of their own body for 9 months. So some of the stuff that is just intuitive for a mother with a newborn is because of that connectiveness. I think some people say also that maybe it's that 4th trimester where the baby doesn't know that it is separate from the mom's body. And so there's this, sorry, Dad, but there's this thing that moms and babies have that you don't get to have.
Totally.
But it's beautiful.
Going back to the people feeling comfortable in a church, I also, in that being a reason they don't want to sing, I audited an intro to voice class in college, and one of the things that the instructor emphasized was when we're children, we all kind of have the singing voice, and adults just tell kids they constantly to not use that voice. It's shh. It's like you're always being shushed. You're always being told to use your inside voice, always being told to keep it down and not like, especially in like a lot of cultures, in the culture I grew up in the United States, that's pretty common. You don't want to like draw attention to yourself when you're out in public. And I think in a church, that is a place where you are told to often, in not necessarily always explicitly, but implicitly, this is not a place where you use your outside voice or your singing voice or your questioning voice or any kind of voice that, as you said, like shows vulnerability. And so I wonder if like a lot of the effort is just kind of recover this thing that we have as children in a space where we're worshiping.
Yep, absolutely. When you think about it, singing is really about 2 things that I think are also very theological things. One, singing is to say, I'm here. And I think that's very true from that moment that, your baby made her first cry in the world. She's saying, I'm here. And I think another way that singing and theology are super importantly connected is that singing says that, and you're not alone. So when your baby cries, sings, you respond to her. Even if it's a shush, you are offering a sound response with her to say that she needn't be worried or she needn't be upset that somebody is with her. That's what we're doing when we sing in church too. We're saying to God and to one another, I'm here. I'm using my voice to communicate that I'm here, and that nobody in this room need to be alone. So it's a fundamental way of communicating accompaniment that we are literally born with.
So we've established how important singing is, both for individual relationships with God, for the relationship of the community. I also think it's really important for evangelization. Like we were talking to a Jesuit who works in campus ministry a couple weeks ago, and he said like the three most important things to keep young people coming back are hospitality, preaching, and music. And yet we seem to know this is important, and across the country, it's, I would say, very inconsistent parish to parish, and that might be a bit too charitable in terms of what people are experiencing at Mass. And so is it people who just need to be braver, or can the church be doing things to make people comfortable in singing at Mass?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know how effective it might be to simply tell people to just be braver, although I want to do that too.
There is something to it.
I know, because I don't want to put all the blame on these poor, overworked, underpaid music ministers. Like people need to do their part too.
Yeah, it really is about investment and being invested in the truth of, like, I think you guys are asking like great questions that make me really excited about continuing this kind of work. Like, why do we bother doing this anyway? What's so important about singing as a part of our worship? So be invested at a level of like curiosity, even. I mean, from everybody, from the individual pew goer all the way to the bishops of the church, like have a genuine curiosity about what this is about. But then really, put your money where your curiosity is. I think we need to invest in the education of music ministers. I think we need to invest in continuing to make space for full and part-time positions in parish communities who will ensure that they make music making accessible and quality and something that would make people want to, keep coming back. So even if you have a, less than desirable preaching moment that day, the singing, by its action alone and by the words that we are saying with one another, can in fact cover a lot of those, faults or shortcomings that we might find elsewhere.
First thing I would do if I was a bad preacher, I would just like throw money at the music and hope that detracts from everyone noticing how boring I am.
If you weren't a husband and dad, I would say ordain this man right now.
Well, I didn't say I would be a bad preacher. I was saying if I was.
Of course.
I've seen this dynamic in parishes where even if you've like really invested in a director of music, someone who's got a really good education and has been like very well trained in a number of instruments comes in, and the parish is like, yeah, we kind of like our old stuff. Like, that's great that you've got the latest and greatest from GIA and you've been practicing all summer, but we really just kind of want to sing what we sing. Can you do Here I Am, Lord, like twice a month?
It's an OCP publication, but I will forgive you. I'm kidding.
I mean, yeah, I didn't mean to necessarily advertise one of your competitors as one of the other.
No. It's healthy
publishers.
Competition. Oregon Catholic Press. We are very good friends with them.
Of course,
only good fun.
But in a parish setting, like, how do you solve that? Like a parish just kind of wants to I feel it too. And I'm in the pews, and someone's like, "Oh, we have a new song this week." I'm like, I kind of want to play the certified platinum bangers that I'm familiar with, and not really learn anything new.
I love those, by the way, on like TikTok and Instagram Reels when people are like going through their like top 5 Catholic bangers.
Yeah,
I love those lists. Although
we'll ask for yours at the end.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
A lot of those lists are music that's really from the 80s, and I think that's an interesting conversation too.
I don't know. I like when it's a familiar song that I know and I've sang, and I'm more likely to participate if it is that. But that does become, you kind of get stuck in one decade that you think is the formative, real, true Catholic music.
Yeah.
It kind of stifles any innovation. But if you want people participating, you gotta do songs they know, or at least
Or in
invest
their
in
range.
or training people on new songs, or having just like introducing one new song a year or a month and like really getting people used to it.
I also find that like a lot of the songs that sometimes are picked are like only trained professionals could pull this off. And I'm like, am I at a concert or am I at mass? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, right. And, you know, you could be at both. Some people take a really hard stance on like talking about church music as performance music. And also we want people to be invested with the same level of preparation that you would for a performance. Otherwise, what kind of thing are we excusing our way into? But I would say, you know, if any new music director came to a church with their own set repertoire that they know is bigger and better than the church's current repertoire, I would never suggest that they change too much at all right away, because the sung repertoire of a community is their core, you know, it's a part at least of their core faith experience. And you wouldn't want to pull that rug out from under people and just expect them to get on your bandwagon, as lovely as your music planning might be. Definitely slow and over time. If you really think the community's repertoire is that lacking, and you want to make significant changes, you still need to do it slowly and over time, or you'll lose people. You know, a lot of things in church, I think, can be related to that glorious metaphor of, you know, we're steering a very big ship. And if we turn too hard at any given point, it's going to capsize. We're going to lose people. And it's our responsibility to accompany people on the way, not to make them bend to our own will or preferences.
The thing about like bad music in a church, I think a lot of people feel that, experience that, and they want to blame it on the music director. If you could just stick up for the music director here, and maybe for people listening to the show who are ready to do that and write it off as that's the problem, and if they just got a new music director, things would get better. Is that true?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm sure it is true. But.
Sometimes it is true. Yeah, sometimes it is true, and it's really hard, especially as, you know, more and more of these positions become volunteer. It's really hard to say no to free labor, right?
Yeah.
And also, as a church that has we have a whole book about this, guys, Catholic social teaching. We should be sticking up for the worker. And if we do believe that work of the liturgy is the source and summit of our faith, is our preeminent concern when we come together to worship as community, then we need to support that. We need to support the people who labor and give their lives to do it. I like to remind people who are extra hard on their music directors that being a music director is an incredibly vulnerable position. Partially because, yes, you're doing that vulnerable thing of music making. You're being judged on your talent or somebody's perception of how talented or not you are. It's hard to be in front of people, literally your face, your voice in front of people on a regular basis. That takes a certain amount of courage and ability to be a risk taker, ability to, you know, develop over time, a thick skin to people who say, you know, their harsh critiques right to your face or to your boss.
I cantored one time in college, and it was just for like a small like Thursday night mass, and holy moly, that gave me so much more like humility and empathy, because we got to the Alleluia and the verse part of the and I just like didn't sing it. I was like, I can't. And so there was just nothing. I was like, cool.
I once led the responsorial psalm, and it is the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah.
It is scary. I mean, I've done thousands of masses in my life, and I still am nervous every time I get up there, because it's vulnerable. It's you. There's something, it's not just about, you know, a work that you're producing, but it's something about you that is coming from your body that is on display. And you want to say that you're doing this out of, you know, your love of God and God's people. And also you are a person you're a real human with real human fallibility and real human feelings about what it is to be in front of another, allowing yourself to be judged or used in a way that you might not be totally prepared for sometimes. And it's a tough job to do. And I like to remind people that music directors, paid or unpaid, are often committing to a level of sacrifice that not many people can understand unless they're in that position themselves. To sacrifice so many of your nights and weekends, especially when you yourself, many music directors have a family at home. And so the negotiation of being away from family on nights and weekends is something that, by virtue of their being, their willingness to be your music director, they're saying, I value this community enough to sacrifice some time with my most beloved people in the world because I believe in what this community stands for. I believe in our possibility and our potential. They also don't have the privilege because, of course, who else is making that sacrifice? Priests, deacons, surely they have families too who are, wondering where they might get their nights, weekends, holidays with their family again. They're making that sacrifice too. The difference for music directors is that they don't have the security of a job.
The institutional church, yeah.
If someone doesn't like the way they're doing their music director job, it doesn't sometimes take that many complaints before their boss starts considering another option. And there's no pension for these kinds of musicians. There is no security blanket. There's very little in terms of resources, and the jobs themselves are becoming fewer and far between. So we're really putting people out and their families out when we're making a rash decision based on style.
Yeah. So we focused a lot on one of the challenges for music ministry, which is just getting people to sing at all. But on top of that, because we're the Catholic Church, there has to be some sort of liturgical war around,
of course,
which songs we actually choose to sing. So I'm curious, and if you've experienced that firsthand, where there are hymns where you have priests or parishioners coming up to you saying, that's a heretical song.
Yep, I sure have.
What are the top offenders for?
The top offenders of heresy? It's interesting. Recently, we've had a lot of customer emails come in about if they think that we are gender neutralizing any of the hymns. So this is true that there are multiple versions of hymns that exist that will replace a lot of the masculine pronouns with just the word God. And I think a lot of the initiative to do that comes from the text authors themselves, who maybe wrote it this way at one time in their life and have come to understand that this could have broader application, or even our understanding of God could be broadened a little bit if we simply change a word. And so they changed the word. But there are people who respond immediately and with the confidence that this is indeed heretical if we emasculate God. And so that's evidence that on the positive side, people are paying attention. That's nice to know. And it also shows that we're at a certain place. Some of us in this country are at a certain place with our understanding of songs and what actual heresy might be. And we have some room to grow. I think probably the most common one that, because it is our copyright that comes into play, is the song All Are Welcome, which
a pretty controversial message.
Yes, really. Yeah. Isn't it fascinating that that's the one that
what's the punctuation at the end of that? Is it all are welcome, period? All are welcome, question
It seems
mark?
Like we have erred in putting a period there, and it seems that the actual interpretation is a question mark sometimes.
Can you explain the controversy that happened around this song and a few others? I think it was in 2020 that the U.S. bishops put out guidance for bishops and music directors about what to look for when choosing which songs to use in the Mass.
The question around this song in particular actually kind of comes in waves, and it has ever since the song was conceived. And it's sad to see how many people so quickly assume that it's heretical because of the notion that all people should be welcome here. And how the various wars have gone off in tangents about what people need to do to make themselves welcome, or the kind of person who is welcome here, the kind of person who definitely is not welcome here. None of that belongs in Catholic theology. The memo that went around in 2020 from the bishops said, actually focused on a couple of other different things, which relate to a very common concern that the bishops and many of the faithful have about the bread and wine becoming body and blood. And is it true that if we are singing a song after the consecration happens in the liturgy, should we only refer to it as body and blood and never again refer to it as bread and wine? Will that confuse the faithful? If you read that document, you can see them wrestling with that question there. It doesn't necessarily say that we cannot sing that, but it draws an attention towards, are we limiting ourselves and our understanding of what is happening in that moment of consecration or in the Mass generally?
So let's just pull up the lyrics. Let us build a house where love is found in water, wine, and wheat.
There you go, right there.
That is the offending lyric.
That's one of the offending lyrics, yes.
And the idea being that if you remind people that the Eucharist maintains its accidents of bread and wine, that they might get confused about the transubstantiation.
They might get confused. Well, you remember that survey that went around about the same time?
The Pew survey,
Yep.
about how many Catholics believe in the real presence, which
sparked the Eucharistic revival, among other things.
Yes.
Right. And then it was kind of decided that actually we asked the question in a way
that was confusing,
where we didn't get the answers that were true.
Because there's nothing confusing about transubstantiation.
Yeah, you know what's confusing about it? It's a mystery.
Well, I do think there need to be some line, like there have to be some guardrails, and maybe all are welcome should be safely within those guardrails. But like we're not going to be singing Taylor Swift at Mass, and this
I
bishop...
can make a case for some songs.
But no, so the bishops in that guidance also pointed out as problematic songs that will lead the faithful to believe that the Jews are responsible for their killing God. And so I think that's sound guidance.
Yeah, we should pay attention to those things. I think the good news about that 2020 document is that the bishops recognize how powerful music can be. And they can recognize that since it's so powerful, we need to make an investment and continue making investments in understanding what the effects of this very powerful tool we have might indeed be. And like anything we're making an investment in, our understanding of it will continue to evolve. So I'm happy that the bishops care very much about what we are singing. And there are things that when it's a limited document that is assessing these guardrails, when the committee of people who contributes to the document is limited, we're going to have a limited understanding of what's really possible. I don't know that there's enough, cultural competency reflected in that document. And I don't know, it raises questions for me about what are, the collateral damage when you give the impression that all are welcome. People by and large are not going to read the whole document of anything ever.
No, but a bishop might. And if a bishop sees a specific song singled out in a document, even if I'm like on the fence about it or I think it's fine, it's way easier for me to just say, you know what, any song that's in this document, we're just not going to do anymore, which is what we saw.
Yes, that's what you saw. And then you saw a little bit of a retraction from that, right?
Yeah, so can you tell the story of Jefferson City?
Sure. And some of it is I'm only going to understand probably as much as anybody understands. We saw an announcement that the Diocese of Jefferson City put out a decree about a list of songs that were banned, explicitly banned, certain songs and certain composers' work. And it was by and large very informed by that document that the bishops put out in 2020. But what was amazing to see was kind of the outpouring of concern then of the faithful in response to this decree to say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't take into account what this particular song has meant to me personally or to us as a people, how it has formed us and informed us about the faith. And, not not at all disregarding any of the concerns that might have been highlighted, but saying something bigger is happening here. And I don't think the thing that you're concerned about outweighs the value that this particular song has had for our community. And so in Jefferson City, even though the decree had already been made public, due to the response of the people saying, hey, wait a minute, we weren't a part of this. We want our voice to be a part of this too. The bishop wisely said, okay, let's step back a second. I'll take back the ban and let's have a conversation. And I think that was incredibly, it was an incredible show of continuing that work of synodal conversation that Francis invited us into.
And it's I feel like a really concrete example. Like, a lot of people have been trying to wrap their heads around what it means to be a synodal church. And this is a very oh, okay, they made a decision, there was pushback, and instead of the bishop just plowing ahead with it, said, okay, no, let's get your input. So, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it's very much, and it's so parallel to that story in the gospel, depending on which one you're reading, the Canaanite woman or the Syrophoenician woman, when Jesus first, refuses to help. And then she says, but please, even the puppies get the scraps from the table, please. And he changes his mind, and he goes about in a different way. It's an example of synodal conversation, and it's an example of continuing the gospel in real life contemporary contexts that I think is incredible.
You brought it up a couple times. I think it's important that we argue about music, liturgical music especially, right? Because it shows that we care. Mm-hmm. I just wish that the words you used were cultural competency. I wish we had a little bit more of that. I wish we were just a little bit smarter about the ways in which we did that. I think the church should also we don't have a great track record with trying to ban movies or books or songs. We're just not effective at it. If anything, we draw way more attention to these things. Asher brought up, I think, an excellent example of a place where we do need to kind of pay attention to some of our music and really put some guardrails up. But I hope we've learned from the experience of that 2020 doc.
Yeah, I hope so too. And we're still a fallible people. And so we leave room for that fallibility to sometimes catch us off guard a little bit. But we can grow. I think one of the things that is not helping us to grow in that, even in the issue of cultural competency, is that unlike pre-Vatican II, when a territorial parish boundary was a very real thing. So we would all, despite our political affiliation, despite our preference of song style, despite if we liked our neighbor or not, we would all still go to the same church on Sunday and be kind of forced to exist in that space. And in some ways, I'm sure that was not, easy or pretty all the time, but it was still happening. It was a forced coexistence. Now, people drive a long way to go to the church that they like because of the music, because of the preacher, because of the aesthetic of the building. And so we're not limited to our territorial parish anymore, even more so because we now do a lot of our Catholic identity bonding as well as worship virtually, like we're doing now. I can be hundreds of miles away and still get the kind of conversation, the kind of worship, the kind of song, kind of message that I want to get. And so we're continuing to kind of silo ourselves into groups of people. We don't have to be around the people that we would prefer to not be around. And that's not really helping us have a better cultural competency towards anyone, really. Racial contexts, language contexts, country of origin contexts. But there are also just between, as we see so viscerally in our nation right now, a continued and growing divide between political affiliation and therefore the type of church community that you would like to be associated with.
So just real quick, should a parish try to incorporate maybe All Are Welcome and some Gregorian chant, or should they pick a lane? in a particular style?
They should, a parish should absolutely limit themselves to GIA copyrights every week of any style.
Good answer.
I think always exploring variety of genres is a good idea.
Should you do it in like different masses, or like should one mass have a coherent style?
Yeah. There are lots of places that have like, oh, I go to the folk mass, or I go to the contemporary mass, I go to the life team mass. That's I think to a lesser problematic extent that is a continuation of siloing. But I do think that just like every diocese is making their own decision, every parish has to make their own decision about what's going to work best in their community. And ultimately, it's not about getting people to like every style of music. It's about creating people who are good people. It's helping people live their gospel values.
Oh, right. That's the point.
Right. I think exploring music of various genres does inherently do that. It gives us at least a curiosity about the other. Once you're curious about something, you're going to get to know it better. Once you know it better, you're going to learn how to love it better. But that is not necessarily a straight line trajectory for a lot of places. And so every parish is making its own decisions about how this is how we can, to the best of our ability, form our people. We don't have the resources to do polyphonic, organ-based, large choir-led music, but we do have the resources to do Here I Am, Lord, to use your example. And we can do that well, and we know our people will engage in it, so we're going to do that. I would encourage us to always continue to grow, but yeah, if that's what you can do well, and if that's serving your people well, I get it. Do that.
Yeah. All right, Kate, thank you for being a sounding board for our very strong and hopefully not too culturally incompetent opinions about music. Before we let you go, we do have one final question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, if you could canonize one person, living or dead, Catholic or not, fictional or real, who would it be and why?
This is not a very original answer, but I know she's on her way. And I would just add my voice to the chorus of people hoping that Dorothy Day will indeed be canonized, and just offer my gratitude and thanksgiving for her life of good work with the Catholic Worker Movement.
You said it very earnestly, so we'll allow it, but it is a bad answer for this podcast. Everyone says it.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah. We make some people redo it, but that was very earnest.
Oh,
so.
I can redo it if you want.
Give me another one. Give me another example.
Bluey.
Oh, I love that.
Did you say Bluey?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, give us the case for Bluey.
Love it.
Okay. If I could canonize one person, fictional or real, I would probably canonize Bluey, because I think that, first of all, it's incredibly enjoyable to follow Bluey along with her sister and her parents in their idyllic dog life.
People without kids are wondering what's going on.
I don't have kids, and I'm obsessed with Bluey. It is a cartoon that came out of Australia. I do have nieces and nephews who love it, so I'm not just like completely weird. But I will watch it without them.
Appeals to the masses, expresses childlike joy and wonder. I mean, what is not holy about that example?
Yep.
I love it. Awesome. Saint Bluey, pray for us. Thank you so much, Kate. That is a fantastic answer. Listeners, you can listen to Kate Williams on the Interchange podcast, which is put out by GIA Publications. Anything else you want to plug, Kate?
No, thank you guys so much for having me. I'm happy to continue this conversation, and I'm so glad that you guys are making this investment too.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kate. Jesuitical is made by Zach and I, Sebastian Gomes, William Gualtieri, and Kevin Christopher Robles. Faith formation provided by Father Eric Sundrup, SJ. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, or like us on whatever platform you're on. You can support Jesuitical by subscribing to America Magazine at americamagazine.org. We'll see you next week.